Again. Okay. So we recently made a prison visit to a maximum security prison in Walla Walla, Washington. Maximum security means that the inmates spend about 22 to 23 hours a day in their cells. So there are three types of prisons in the United States. There's the jail, which is the local and county prisons, and they have people who are awaiting sentences and those convicted of minor crimes. Then there's a state prison system, and then there's the federal prison system. There's approximately 1.2 million inmates in the state prison system and 190,000 inmates in the federal prison system. In 1985, there were 750,000 inmates total in the United States. There's now 2.3 million. The number of inmates incarcerated, they rose dramatically in the 1980s due to the three-strike system and the mandatory prisoning sentencing that they had. So now I want to talk about the private prisons versus the public prison systems. Between 1990 and 2000, the number of private facilities grew from 5 to 100, and they were operated by 20 different private firms. In the past decade, the number of inmates in the for-profit prisons throughout the U.S. rose 44%. Yeah, that's a lot. So why are we having so many? Well, the for-profit prisons, they get paid to have full beds. Should the inmate population decrease, then they lose their funding. So the two largest operators of private facilities. These people lobby for policies that will increase incarceration. In the early 1990s, these organizations, along with the National Rifle Association, lobbied for the so-called truth in sentences and three strikes you're outlaws. Truth in sentencing calls for all violent offenders to serve 85% of their sentences before being eligible for parole. The three strikes call for mandatory life imprisonment for a third felony conviction. The industry is aware of what a reduced crime rate could mean to their bottom line. There was a report in 2010 from them. It says, our growth depends on a number of factors we cannot control, including crime rate. Reductions in crime rates could lead to reductions in arrests, convictions, and sentences requiring incarceration at correctional facilities. That means that while private prison companies and other economic interests were not the primary drivers of mass incarceration, they do much to sustain it today. The private prison industry has successfully lobbied for changes that increase the profit for their employers. They have opposed measures that would bring reduced sentences or shorter prison terms. The private prison industry has been accused of being at least partly responsible for America's high rates of incarcerations. The ACLU reported in 2013 that numerous studies indicate private jails are actually filthier, more violent, less accountable, and possibly more costly than their public counterparts. The ACLU stated that the for-profit prison industry is a major contributor to bloated state budgets and mass incarcerations, not a part of any viable solution to these urgent problems. So an August 2016 report by the U.S. Department of Justice asserts that privately operated federal facilities are less safe, less secure, and more punitive than other federal prisons. Shortly after this report was published, the Department of Justice announced that it would stop using private prisons. Good for them. On February 23rd, the Department of Justice, under Attorney General Jeff Sessions, overturned the ban on using private prisons. According to Sessions, the Obama administration's memorandum changed long-standing policy and practices and impaired the Bureau's ability to meet the future needs of the federal correction systems. Therefore, I direct the Bureau to return to its previous approach. They were almost out. So now actually what I want to talk about is volunteering in prison, because that's what we went to do. We were invited by the volunteers to attend the Buddha Day at Walla Walla Prison. Now you got to understand, these prisoners, they have groups, they have the Buddhist groups, but they cannot meet unless there is a volunteer there. That's why volunteers are so important. There are 3,600 volunteers in the state of Washington, and a lot of them are retired people. One of the people we stayed with, they're both retired, they're very kind people. He stated that he knew what he was retired, and that's what he did. He volunteered, and that if more people that are retired and need something to do, wanted something to do, would volunteer at prisons, they would find that their life would be much happier. So there are many different programs in different cities, and you can usually find a program to match what you can do and what you can teach to these prisoners, to these inmates. And the inmates are very, very grateful for volunteers. So each and every volunteer brings a unique talent, skill, and knowledge and ability to the prisoners, to the inmates. The volunteer program provides men an array of volunteer opportunities based on needs that are matched throughout Washington state. For the incarcerated individual, volunteers influence lifestyle changes and provide a vital link to the community. And for individuals on community supervision, volunteers provide support and assistance by developing resources that enable these individuals to become connected or stay connected to the community. Volunteering also provides the opportunity for personal satisfaction and growth, and the state will benefit from volunteers' decisions to be of assistance to others. So there are several reasons why people should volunteer, actually. Economics. Through active citizen participation, inmates can be reintegrated into the community and become law-abiding members of society. It costs more to keep a person in prison than to place them on probation, or for the courts to order restitution or community service, or place them under electronic surveillance. Public safety. The return of the inmate to the community as a safe and law-abiding system can be fostered and promoted by individual citizens with the volunteer program. Feelings of bitterness may be reduced by offering a hand of friendship, understanding, and acceptance. Most of the people in prison, they feel like they've been forgotten. So when a volunteer comes in, they're really, really grateful. Personal growth. Volunteers give more than just their time. They give of themselves to help guide the inmate towards stronger family ties and toward a clearer understanding of the responsibilities of a law-abiding citizen. Okay. And there are a lot of other factors too. While we were there, we mostly talked about thought training and how they can look at situations and the situation that they're in and change it to their benefit by becoming more stable, less aggressive, and more thoughtful. And we talked about how to react to challenging situations, and they find themselves in challenging situations all the times. So teaching inmates alternate ways of dealing with anger and finding peace can be essential for their rehabilitation. Many inmates were arrested for violence and anger-related issues that they can learn to channel in different and more constructive ways. And volunteer programs that help focus on mindfulness and relaxation are excellent ways to help refocus and rehabilitate inmates. Any volunteer program that focuses on changing criminal and inmate behavior and mindsets are sure to be extremely beneficial to an inmate's rehabilitation process. So we need to think about that. The more we can help these people to help themselves, the better off we as a society and they will be. When children are abused and neglected, we care. We feel bad. We want to help them. We send in social workers. We pass laws to protect them. We create nonprofits and task force. But when these same children grow up and act out of their pain, confusion, and lack of modeling and parenting, we lock them up and forget them. We shame them and judge them and punish them. We take them away from their kids, their families, and anything that would help them keep their dignity or humanity. and we hardly talk about them. There is a stigma on the subject itself. We think of them as not like us. They're criminals. But they are just people like us. People who had intolerable lives and didn't deal with it all that well. But they are still people. So if we can remember that and look into helping in any way that we can, we will be better as a nation. We will be better as a world.
Is there a reason why a volunteer needs to organize the Buddha Day or religious gatherings?
Some prisons sometimes actually have been taken over by gangs. Actually, the prison has been taken over, and I think the reason they do this is a matter of control. If they have this relationship set up, like if you just let the inmates get together, then they have less control of what's happening, and they've had problems with prisons being overrun.
Mm-hmm.
So already there are numerous problems in prisons because it's like a city. Everything is there. It gets in there somehow, and they fire people all the time. Even just recently, I know that a local prison let go of some of their staff because they weren't following the guidelines. So it's a really hard environment to regulate. There's a lot of challenges, and so this is one way that they try to minimize that.
Also, control is what the whole prison system is about. Yeah, it's very geared towards punishment, and one of the big punishments is to control other people, because nobody likes to be controlled, so they control, you know, where you go, at what time you go, where you can meet, what you can do, and so on. So that's the whole approach. It makes it difficult on the inmates, difficult on the guards in the prison. Another factor about the for-profit prisons is that they have every financial incentive to cut programs, because the more programs they cut and the less staff they pay, the more money the shareholders get. So they have no motivation to do anything to help the incarcerated. One of my dreams is, because we have on the Abbey, on the Tipton Children website, a whole section about prisons, is to compile some of the inmates' stories into a book that shows precisely what you were just talking about, that they're human beings with feelings and needs, and that things influence them on a very deep level, and we can help.
Yeah, a lot of people that I've met in prisons, it's like, why are these people in here? Yeah.
Wrong place at the wrong time.
Mm-hmm.
Also, the way the policing is done, if you're in a minority, much more likely to get arrested than a white person doing the same crime.